The cowboy who bought a stranger, only to learn she was the Apache chief's wife. Daniel Carter was known across the frontier as a quiet man who kept to himself. Brask. He lived on a modest ranch far from town, surrounded by open land and long stretches of sky that seemed to hold more silence than sound. Most people described him as steady and reliable, but also distant. He spoke only when necessary, worked from sunrise until night, and avoided unnecessary trouble. Life had taught him that peace came from simple routines, caring for horses, fixing fences, and watching the seasons change without asking too much from the world. That morning began like many others. The sun rose slowly, casting soft light across the fields as Daniel finished feeding the animals. Bah! A cold wind moved across the grass, hinting that winter would arrive sooner than expected. He knew he needed supplies, maybe even extra hands to help prepare the ranch. After hesitating for a while, he saddled his horse and began the ride toward town. The town sat at the edge of civilization, a place where traders, travelers, and wanderers crossed paths without always sharing their stories. Bang. Daniel rarely stayed longer than necessary, but he had heard rumors about a small gathering outside town where people exchanged goods and information. He hoped to find tools or maybe hire someone willing to work honestly. As he approached the gathering, he noticed the usual noise. Voices arguing over prices, horses shifting restlessly, and merchants calling for attention. Nothing about it felt unusual at first.
But then he saw her. She stood near a wagon, slightly apart from the crowd.
Her posture was calm but guarded, as if she was observing everything without wanting to be noticed. Her dark hair moved gently in the wind, and her eyes seemed focused on something far beyond the gathering. The traders around her spoke in low voices, sometimes laughing in ways that made Daniel uncomfortable. He watched as people glanced at her, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. Daniel slowed his horse, feeling an uneasy weight settle in his chest. Something about the situation felt wrong. The woman did not look like someone willingly part of the gathering. She seemed tired, but strong, standing with quiet dignity, despite the way others spoke about her. He dismounted and walked closer, pretending to look at supplies while listening carefully. One trader mentioned that she had been found alone after a conflict and had nowhere to go. Another suggested that someone should take responsibility for her before winter arrived. Their words carried a tone that treated her like an object rather than a person. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. He was not a man who interfered easily, but he could not ignore what he saw. Bales. He glanced toward the woman again. She met his eyes for only a moment before looking away, but that brief connection revealed something deeper. Exhaustion mixed with determination. Bet. The trader noticed Daniel watching and approached him with a grin that felt forced. He began explaining the situation, speaking quickly as if trying to convince him. Daniel listened without interrupting. The more he heard, the more certain he felt that she had been misunderstood and left without real support. "What is her name?" Daniel asked quietly. The trader shrugged. "She doesn't say much." Daniel turned toward her directly. "What is your name?" he asked gently. There was a long pause. The crowd seemed to quiet for a moment, curious about what would happen next. Finally she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "Tala." The name carried weight, and Daniel sensed that it held more meaning than she was willing to explain. He nodded slowly, respecting her silence. Without overthinking, Daniel made a decision that surprised even himself. He offered payment, not as ownership, but as a way to remove her from a situation that felt wrong. The traders quickly accepted, eager to move on. Some people whispered among themselves, clearly confused about why a quiet rancher would involve himself in such a situation. Daniel ignored the whispers. He simply turned back to Tala. You can come to my ranch, he said calmly. You'll have a place to stay.
Nothing more is expected.
She studied him carefully, as if measuring his words against past experiences.
Bay. After a moment, she nodded once. The ride back to the ranch was quiet. The sky stretched wide above them, and the sound of horses moving across dry earth filled the silence. Daniel did not ask questions. He believed that trust grew slowly, and pushing too soon would only build walls between them. Tala watched everything: the path, the distant hills, the direction of the wind. Her awareness impressed him. She moved with the confidence of someone who understood survival deeply. As evening approached, they arrived at the ranch. The small house stood strong against the open land, surrounded by fences and grazing horses. Tala dismounted smoothly, her movements controlled despite clear fatigue. Daniel showed her the simple space where she could rest. Bert. He explained where water and food were kept, speaking plainly without unnecessary details. She listened quietly, nodding occasionally but saying little. That first evening passed in near silence. They sat at opposite ends of the table, sharing a simple meal. Daniel noticed that she ate carefully, as if conserving energy. He sensed that she was used to uncertainty and had learned to rely only on herself. Later, as the fire burned low, he stepped outside to check the animals. The sky above was filled with stars, and the air carried a calm he rarely questioned. Beck. Yet tonight felt different. Bringing Tala to the ranch had shifted something he could not yet understand. Inside, Tala stood near the window, watching the darkness beyond the fields. Her expression revealed a mixture of relief and caution. She had accepted shelter, but trust was not easily given. Over the next few days, a quiet rhythm formed between them. Tala began helping with small tasks without being asked. She observed how Daniel worked and adjusted quickly, showing skill with horses and tools that surprised him. She spoke only when necessary, but her actions showed awareness and strength. Daniel noticed that she often paused to study the horizon, as if expecting something or someone. He chose not to ask.
Everyone carried stories they were not ready to share. One morning, while repairing a fence together, their hands briefly reached for the same tool.
They exchanged a quick glance, and for the first time, Tala allowed a faint smile to appear. It was small but genuine, and Daniel felt a quiet sense of relief. The ranch began to feel less empty. Though neither of them spoke openly about it, both understood that their lives had changed the moment Daniel stepped forward at the trading gathering. Two strangers from different worlds now shared the same land, bound by an unexpected decision whose true meaning had yet to reveal itself. And somewhere beyond the distant hills, unseen forces were already moving, slowly bringing the past closer to the present. A past that would soon challenge everything Daniel believed he understood about Tala and the choices he had made. But days that followed began quietly, almost gently, as if both Daniel and Tala were testing the shape of their new reality.
Life on the ranch moved with a steady rhythm that did not change for anyone.
The sun rose early, the animals needed care, and the land demanded attention. Daniel had always found comfort in routine, but now he noticed small differences that made the ranch feel less empty than before. Tala woke early each morning without being asked. At first she watched Daniel work, learning his habits and the way he managed the land. She rarely asked questions, yet her actions showed understanding. She adjusted the saddles before he needed them, repaired small tools with careful hands, and guided the horses with a quiet confidence that surprised him. Daniel realized quickly that she was not someone unfamiliar with hard work. She moved across the ranch as if she understood the language of the land itself. When a young horse became restless, She approached it calmly, speaking softly in words he did not understand. The animal relaxed under her touch, and Daniel watched with quiet respect. Despite this growing cooperation, conversation between them remained limited. Daniel believed that trust came slowly, like a seed growing beneath the soil before anyone could see it. He did not want to push her into sharing more than she wished. Tala, in turn, seemed grateful for the silence. It allowed her to exist without pressure. The town soon noticed Daniel was not alone anymore. A neighbor passing by on horseback slowed to look at the ranch and later spread the news. Buy it. Within days, whispers reached the town. Some people were curious, others cautious. Frontier communities often struggled to accept what they did not understand, and Tala's presence became a topic of quiet discussion. One afternoon, Daniel rode into town for supplies, leaving Tala at the ranch.
At the general store, he felt eyes following him more than usual. The shopkeeper greeted him politely, but soon asked about the woman living with him.
But Daniel answered simply, saying she was helping at the ranch. He avoided explaining further, not because he wanted to hide anything, but because he felt her story belonged to her alone. As he left, two men standing outside exchanged glances that made him uneasy. One of them suggested that trouble could follow when strangers arrived without explanation.
Daniel ignored the comment, but the words stayed in his mind during the ride home. When he returned, Tala was repairing a broken fence near the edge of the property.
Bastis. The sunset painted the sky with soft colors, and for a moment he paused, watching her work. She moved with patience, tying the wire carefully, ensuring it would hold against strong winds. She noticed him watching and gave a small nod. That evening they shared another quiet meal. Slowly their conversations began to grow longer. Tala asked about the ranch, about how long he had lived there, and about the seasons. Daniel spoke in simple terms, describing storms that changed the land and winters that tested survival. He rarely spoke about himself, but she listened closely when he did. One night, a strong storm arrived without warning. Wind rushed across the plains, shaking the walls of the house and pushing dust against the windows. Daniel went outside to secure the animals, and Tala followed without hesitation. Together they worked under the dark sky, guiding the horses into shelter and reinforcing the barn doors. During that storm, Daniel saw a different side of her. She moved with determination, not fear. Her awareness of the environment helped them finish quickly, and when they finally returned inside, both were exhausted but relieved.
Sitting near the fire afterward, Tala finally spoke about fragments of her past.
She did not give details or names, but she mentioned traveling long distances, facing conflict, and losing trust in people who once promised safety.
Her words carried emotion, yet she spoke calmly, as if she had already accepted what could not be changed.
Daniel listened without interrupting. He felt honored that she shared even a small part of her story, responded by telling her about his own life, how he had once lived closer to town but chose isolation after losing family, and realizing that peace came from distance. It was the first time he had spoken openly about loneliness. Their connection deepened after that night. They began working together more naturally, anticipating each other's actions without needing instructions. Tala introduced small changes that improved the ranch. She suggested rotating grazing areas to keep the land healthy and found hidden water sources Daniel had never noticed. Her presence brought new energy, and Daniel found himself smiling more often. Still, there were moments when she seemed distant. Sometimes she stood outside for long periods, watching the horizon as if expecting riders to appear. Her posture changed during those moments, becoming tense and alert. Daniel sensed she was listening for something only she understood. One morning, while training a horse together, Tala suddenly stopped and looked toward the distant hills. Daniel followed her gaze but saw nothing. She relaxed after a moment. Yet the brief change in her expression revealed that she carried worry she had not spoken about. The town's rumors slowly reached the ranch. A traveling merchant stopped by and mentioned that people were curious about the strange woman living there. Daniel felt protective but chose not to react strongly. He believed that time would prove her character better than any explanation. Best. As weeks turned into months, the ranch began to feel like a shared space rather than a place where two strangers simply coexisted. They developed small habits, sharing coffee at sunrise, working side by side without speaking, and watching the sky change colors in the evening. Bah. One afternoon, Tala laughed for the first time. It was unexpected and genuine, triggered by a stubborn goat that refused to follow instructions. Best. The sound surprised both of them, and Daniel realized how rare it was for her to let her guard down. That moment stayed with him long after. Bah! Yet beneath this growing comfort lay a quiet tension neither of them addressed. Daniel sensed that her past was not finished with her. The way she watched the horizon, the way she sometimes paused as if listening to distant echoes, all of it hinted at unfinished chapters.
Late one evening, as they sat outside watching the stars, Tala asked him a question that lingered long after she spoke it.
Best. Why did you help me? She asked softly. Daniel thought for a moment before answering. Because it felt wrong to walk away.
She studied his face carefully, as if searching for hidden motives, then nodded slowly. Not many people choose that.
Bess. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, Tala seemed fully present, no longer divided between past and present. Neither of them realized that change was already approaching. Somewhere beyond the distant hills, people were searching. The quiet life they had built together was about to face questions neither could avoid, and the truth Tala carried would soon rise to the surface, altering everything Daniel believed about their shared journey. The morning began quietly, like many others on the ranch, but there was something different in the air that neither Daniel nor Tala could fully explain. The sky was clear, and a soft wind moved across the plains, carrying distant sounds that felt unfamiliar. Daniel stepped outside early to check the animals, while Tala stood near the fence, watching the horizon with more focus than usual. She had been restless the night before. Daniel noticed it, but chose not to ask questions. He understood that some thoughts needed space before they could become words. Bet. Still, he sensed that something was approaching. Not danger exactly, but change. As the sun climbed higher, Tala suddenly paused in the middle of her work. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she looked toward the far hills. Bay. Daniel followed her gaze but saw only distant shapes at first. Slowly, faint figures appeared against the horizon, moving steadily toward the ranch. Brace. Riders. Daniel felt tension rise in his chest. Visitors were rare, and strangers arriving without warning often meant trouble. He glanced at Tala. Her posture had changed completely. The calm quietness he had come to know was replaced by alert focus, as if she had been waiting for this moment.
"They are coming here," she said softly. Her voice carried certainty, not fear.
Daniel nodded and walked toward the house, checking that everything was in order. He did not reach for a weapon immediately. Instead, he trusted his instincts, which told him to stay calm and observe. The riders approached slowly, not rushing, their movements controlled and respectful. As they drew closer, Daniel could see they were Apache warriors. Their presence felt serious but not hostile. Tala stepped forward, standing beside him but slightly ahead, as if preparing to face something she had known would arrive eventually. When the riders stopped, silence filled the air for several long moments. The leader dismounted first, his expression steady and thoughtful. He spoke in a language Daniel did not understand. Tala responded, her voice firm yet emotional. Daniel watched quietly, realizing that this was a conversation far deeper than simple greetings. The exchange lasted several minutes. At times, Tala's voice softened, and at other moments it carried strength and authority he had never heard before. Finally, she turned toward Daniel. "There is something I must tell you," she said. But her eyes held both gratitude and hesitation. Daniel felt his heart tighten slightly, but remained calm. "These men are searching for me," she continued.
They are not strangers.
"They are from my people." Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "I was not only a traveler," she said after a pause. "I did not tell you everything before." "I could not. It was not safe." Base.
I am the wife of an Apache chief,
she said quietly. The words settled heavily between them. Daniel felt surprise, but not anger. Instead, he felt a strange clarity, as if many small pieces he had noticed before suddenly made sense. Her skills, her confidence, the way she carried herself with quiet authority.
He took a slow breath.
"Why did you hide it?" he asked gently. "I needed time," she replied.
I was taken from my people during conflict. Those who found me did not know who I was.
If I told the wrong person, it could bring danger to many. I did not know who to trust. Daniel understood. Trust was something he valued deeply, and he could see that her silence had come from protection rather than deception. But the Apache leader stepped forward and spoke again, this time slowly enough that Daniel could sense the meaning even without understanding the words. Tala translated. "He says they have searched for me for many months," she explained. "They believed I was lost." The leader looked at Daniel and nodded respectfully. Bala continued. "He thanks you for protecting me." Daniel returned the nod, feeling both honored and uncertain. He had helped her simply because it felt right, never expecting to be part of something larger. More riders approached slowly from behind the first group, stopping at a respectful distance. The atmosphere remained calm, yet the weight of the moment grew stronger. Tala stood between two worlds. The life she had built at the ranch and the life that had existed long before Daniel met her. They moved toward the house together, where Daniel offered water and a place to rest. The visitors accepted with quiet gratitude. Inside, Tala spoke with them at length, translating parts of the conversation for Daniel. She explained that her husband, the chief, had sent search parties across the region after she disappeared. Many feared she would never be found. The traders who had taken her had not understood her identity, and she had chosen silence to avoid escalating conflict. Daniel listened carefully, realizing how close he had come to misunderstanding her entirely. After some time, Tala stepped outside with Daniel alone. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the fields.
I did not mean to keep secrets from you, she said.
I know, Daniel replied simply. She looked toward the riders again, her expression filled with mixed emotion. My husband will come soon. They say he is already traveling here. Daniel felt a quiet heaviness settle inside him. He had known from the beginning that their time together might not last forever, but hearing those words made it real. He respected her history, yet he could not ignore the connection they had built. What will you do? He asked. She did not answer immediately, but I do not know yet, she said finally. The rest of the day passed in thoughtful silence. The visitors remained respectful, speaking only when necessary. Tala moved between conversations, sometimes serious, sometimes quiet, as if preparing herself for a decision she had not yet made. That evening, as the sun began to set, Daniel stood alone near the barn, watching the sky change colors. He thought about the moment he had first seen her at the trading gathering, how simple the decision had seemed then, and how complicated it felt now.
Tala joined him after a while. They stood side by side without speaking.
The silence between them felt deeper than before, filled with unspoken questions. You changed my life," she said quietly. He shook his head slightly.
"You changed mine, too."
She smiled faintly but looked away, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. As darkness fell, the riders prepared camp outside the ranch. The quiet life Daniel had known felt distant now, replaced by uncertainty and anticipation. The truth about Tala had finally come into the open, and with it came choices that would shape the future for both of them. Somewhere beyond the hills, the Apache chief was already on his way, and with his arrival would come decisions that no one could avoid. The next morning arrived with a quiet tension that could be felt in the air long before anyone spoke. Daniel woke earlier than usual, stepping outside while the sky was still soft with early light. The Apache riders were already awake, moving calmly around their camp. Their presence felt respectful, but it also reminded him that the peaceful rhythm of the ranch had changed forever. He walked toward the barn, checking the animals as he always did, trying to focus on routine. Work had always helped him think clearly, yet today his thoughts wandered back to Tala and the truth she had revealed the day before. He respected her honesty, but he could not ignore the uncertainty now standing between them. Tala emerged from the house shortly after, her posture calm but thoughtful. "Bess." She greeted the riders with quiet words before walking toward Daniel. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable, but it carried weight. "They say he will arrive today," she said finally. Daniel nodded. He knew she meant her husband, the Apache chief. The words settled deeply in his chest. He had prepared himself for this moment since she revealed the truth, yet now that it was close, he felt unsure how to face it. Throughout the morning, the ranch felt different. The riders observed everything carefully, respecting Daniel's space while remaining alert. Tala moved between both worlds, helping Daniel with chores and speaking with her people. Daniel noticed how her behavior changed when she spoke their language. Her voice carried confidence and authority, revealing a side of her he had only glimpsed before. Around midday, one of the riders pointed toward the distant horizon. A single figure approached slowly, riding with steady confidence. The others straightened immediately, showing respect even before he arrived. Tala's expression shifted, filled with emotion that Daniel could not fully read. She stepped forward, waiting. As the rider came closer, Daniel saw a man with calm strength in his posture. He carried himself with quiet dignity, not arrogance. When he dismounted, the riders greeted him respectfully. He walked toward Tala first. They stood facing each other for a long moment, speaking softly in their language. Their conversation felt personal, filled with emotion, yet controlled. Breath. Daniel turned away slightly, giving them space.
After a while, Tala gestured toward Daniel.
The chief approached him slowly. Their eyes met, and Daniel felt both curiosity and tension. Tala translated. "He thanks you for protecting me and giving me shelter." "Anyone would have done the same," he said, though he knew that was not entirely true. The chief studied him carefully before speaking again. His tone sounded calm and sincere. Tala translated once more. "He says he respects your actions. You showed honor." Daniel felt relief hearing those words. He had worried about misunderstanding or conflict, but instead he sensed mutual respect forming between them. They spent the afternoon talking, sometimes through Tala's translation and sometimes through simple gestures. The chief explained that Tala had responsibilities among her people, not only as his wife, but also as someone who guided decisions. Her disappearance had created uncertainty, and many had feared she was lost forever. Daniel listened quietly. He realized that Tala had carried a heavier role than he had imagined. Her time on the ranch had been a pause between two worlds, rather than a complete escape. Later, Tala walked with Daniel along the edge of the fields. The wind moved softly through the grass, creating a peaceful atmosphere that contrasted with the complicated emotions inside both of them. "I never expected this," she said. "Neither did I," Daniel replied. "Bet." She stopped walking and looked at him directly. "When I first arrived, I thought I would leave quickly. I did not expect to feel at peace here." Daniel understood. He felt the same, though he rarely spoke about his feelings openly. Breath. "What will you do?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "I have responsibilities. But I also discovered something here. A life where I could breathe without constant expectation." Her words revealed the difficult choice before her. Daniel did not want to influence her decision unfairly. He respected her freedom too much for that. "You must choose what feels right," he said simply. She nodded, grateful for his understanding. That evening, the chief joined them for a shared meal. Though language barriers remained, the atmosphere felt respectful and calm. Daniel noticed that the chief watched Tala carefully, not with control, but with concern. It became clear that their relationship was built on mutual respect rather than dominance. After dinner, the chief spoke privately with Tala for a long time. Daniel stayed outside, giving them space. The sky filled with stars, and the quiet night reminded him of how his life had once been simple and predictable. When Tala finally approached him, her expression showed both clarity and sadness.
Daniel felt admiration for the chief's wisdom. Many would have demanded immediate return, but instead he offered her choice.
Bed. The next day passed slowly. Tala spent time with the riders, sharing stories and listening to news from her people. She also continued helping Daniel, as if trying to hold on to every moment of normal life. Daniel noticed small details. The way she paused to watch the sunrise, the way she touched the fence she had repaired, the way she smiled at the horses. It felt like she was saying goodbye to pieces of the ranch without speaking the words aloud. In the afternoon, a sudden strong wind moved across the plains, bringing a sense of change. Tala stood facing the horizon again, but this time her posture was calm rather than tense. "I will decide soon," she said. Daniel nodded, though his heart felt heavy.
That night, the riders prepared for departure, ready whenever she made her choice.
The campfires glowed softly in the darkness, and quiet conversations filled the air. Daniel sat alone near the barn, reflecting on everything that had happened since the day he met her. He realized that helping her had changed him more than he expected. He had opened his life to someone again, breaking the isolation he had built for years. Tala joined him one last time before making her decision. They sat together without speaking for a while, letting silence carry what words could not. "Perhaps," she said finally, "I will always be grateful for what you gave me. Safety, respect, and a place where I could remember who I am." Daniel looked toward the distant lights of the camp, knowing that the next day would bring answers neither of them could avoid. The choice ahead would not only shape her future but also determine what remained between them after everything they had shared. The night passed slowly, filled with anticipation, as both prepared for a decision that would change their paths forever. The morning of the decision arrived quietly, as if the land itself understood the importance of the moment and chose to remain calm. A thin layer of light stretched across the horizon, slowly turning the sky from deep blue to soft gold. Daniel woke before sunrise, though he had barely slept. His thoughts had moved in circles all night, returning again and again to the same question. What would Tala choose? Outside, the air felt cool and still. The Apache riders were already preparing their horses, moving with calm discipline. Their quiet movements made the moment feel even more serious. Daniel walked toward the barn, focusing on small tasks to steady himself. He checked the water trough, brushed one of the horses, and repaired a loose piece of wood on the fence. Each action felt slower than usual, as if time itself had stretched. Tala stepped outside shortly after, dressed simply, her expression peaceful yet thoughtful. She paused near the doorway, taking a long look at the ranch, the fields, the barn, the house where she had found rest after so much uncertainty.
Daniel watched her quietly, understanding that she was saying goodbye to something even before words were spoken.
They met near the fence where they had worked together many times. For a few moments neither spoke. The silence felt meaningful rather than uncomfortable. I have made my decision, she said softly. Daniel nodded, though his chest felt tight. He had prepared himself to accept whatever she chose, but that did not make it easy. I will return with my people, she said. The words were calm, steady, and clear. There was no hesitation in her voice. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, letting the reality settle inside him. He had expected this outcome. Her responsibilities were important, and he respected the bond she shared with her people. Still, a quiet sadness moved through him, like a slow wave. Bess. I understand, he said. She studied his face carefully, perhaps searching for disappointment or anger, but she found only acceptance, breath. This place changed me, she continued. When I arrived, I was tired and unsure of who I could trust. You gave me time to breathe. You never forced me to explain myself. Because of that, I remembered my strength. Daniel looked toward the fields, feeling both pride and loss at the same time.
You brought change here, too, he said. The ranch feels different now.
Good different, I hope. He nodded. They walked together toward the camp where the Apache chief waited. The riders stood ready, their horses prepared for travel. The chief stepped forward as Tala approached, his expression calm but warm. Pair. They spoke briefly, and Daniel sensed relief among the group, not because she had returned as an obligation, but because she had chosen freely. Tala turned back to Daniel. For a moment the world seemed to pause around them. There is one more thing, she said. Psst. My husband wishes to speak with you. Daniel followed her toward the chief. Through Tala's translation, the chief spoke with sincerity.
He explained that Daniel's kindness had not only protected Tala but also strengthened trust between their people. He invited Daniel to visit their lands in the future, not as a stranger but as a respected guest.
Daniel felt honored by the invitation. He nodded respectfully, unsure of what words could truly express his feelings. After the conversation ended, the riders prepared to leave. The sound of saddles tightening and horses shifting filled the air. Tala stood beside her horse, her hand resting lightly on its neck. She turned to Daniel one last time.
I will not forget this place, she said.
Nor will I forget you, he replied. There were many things left unsaid between them. Gratitude, friendship, and a connection that did not need to be defined by labels. They understood that what they had shared was meaningful, even if their paths now moved in different directions. She mounted her horse smoothly, then paused, looking at the ranch once more. The wind moved gently across the fields, carrying the scent of earth and grass. Daniel watched as the group began to ride away, their figures slowly becoming smaller against the wide landscape. He remained standing long after they disappeared beyond the hills. The silence returned, deeper than before, yet not empty. Beck. It felt filled with memory. The days that followed were difficult at first. The ranch felt quieter without Tala's presence. Small habits reminded him of her. The way tools were organized, the grazing patterns she had suggested, the repaired fence that stood stronger than before. Each detail carried her influence, yet Daniel also felt a sense of growth. Helping her had opened a part of himself he had closed long ago. He found himself speaking more when neighbors visited, less guarded than before. The invitation from the chief remained in his thoughts, a reminder that connections could cross cultures and experiences. One afternoon, weeks after her departure, a young rider arrived carrying a small bundle. Inside was a carefully crafted object, a token of friendship from Tala and her people. Along with it came a simple message expressing gratitude and hope that their paths would cross again. Daniel held the gift quietly, feeling warmth spread through him. Though she had returned to her responsibilities, their story had not ended in loss but in mutual respect and understanding. Seasons changed, as they always did. Winter arrived and passed, giving way to new growth across the land. The ranch continued to thrive, shaped by lessons learned from their time together. Sometimes, as he stood watching the horizon at sunset, Daniel remembered the moment he first saw her at the trading gathering, a stranger standing alone, surrounded by uncertainty. That single decision to step forward had transformed both their lives in ways neither could have predicted.